Exciting news out of California this week. Now, this is something that we've been talking about a lot on the Richard Fowler Show. Tamara and I have shared many a moment talking about this topic, and it's a long time coming. I remember, this was even before Tamara was on the show, when the Blackfish documentary first came out. Richard and I talked about it on the show, and it's really amazing to see the amount of progress that's happened.
Yeah.
I think we were actually taping in my apartment when that documentary came out.
That documentary made waves, no pun intended. But
Pun
it
intended.
did, honestly, like, it's showing so deeply that it made such a big difference that one, not even that long of a video, can truly change the minds of so many people, and I think that's really important. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. But this story is great.
Great documentary.
Yeah.
It's required viewing. Like, if you haven't seen it, what are you doing?
Yeah, you definitely need to watch it.
It's really good. Anyway, the conclusion or climax maybe to this whole orca debacle ends in California. California has just signed a bill. Their governor signed it into law. It's real. California is banning orca captivity and breeding.
Ooh.
All right, check it out. Now, SeaWorld has been hit really, really hard in the last couple of years. It announced that it would end its orca breeding program as well as the theatrical shows that featured killer whales. We talked about them ending the breeding program, but there were a lot of asterisks and kind of like workarounds that still allowed them to do a little bit of what they were looking for. But this is the nail in the coffin. Governor Jerry Brown signed the law this week outlawing orca breeding and captivity programs in the state. So this is huge. Basically right now, since the start of, or the release of this documentary Blackfish, SeaWorld has tanked. Their stocks are doing terrible. Their attendance at their theme parks are down incredibly. And basically, the only way that they can keep an orca is how it would work like this. So killer whales can only be in captivity for educational presentations. The legislation makes additional exceptions for science and educational institutions that have orcas in their care, but basically this is targeted at SeaWorld, right?
Yeah.
So it's awesome.
So
It's great.
I think this is great, but at the same time, we need to keep in mind this is not the end. There are still lots of other animals that are equally as important to the earth that are still in captivity. And
That's a good point.
yeah, it's cool that we don't need to worry about any orcas being in SeaWorld anymore, but at the same time, what about all the dolphin shows? Even at like the Baltimore Aquarium, like they have huge dolphin shows, and yeah, it may seem cool to see stuff like that, but at the same time, what is too far? When do you reach a point where there's no turning around and you have too many animals in captivity and you can't make changes like this? And I think it's proven that this is just one step in the process of learning how to educate people from afar. Just because you can't see something up close doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and it's frustrating to me that that's the only way that we can seem to educate people is by enclosing things in very small tanks so you can bang on the glass.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point. I think it's something that probably we don't think about enough. So like in this situation, you see the documentary Blackfish, you see like what this animal being in captivity actually does to them and to their spirits and the way that like, you know, it really warps their brains.
Yeah.
But what if there was a documentary for like the elephants that are kept at the zoo, and maybe it turns out that elephants at the zoo really shouldn't be kept in a cage that's small or whatever.
Or even something further than that that's closer to what humans assume is more like them. Think about all of the large monkeys and apes and gorillas that are sitting in the National Zoo right down the street from us right now, and they're literally sitting in cages, and those animals are almost equivalent to our own beings, and we're just letting them chill in there all day long.
No, you're totally right. And that is the question, right? Because like you see this story and you ask any person on the street, I think most people are going to say, right on, that's what you're supposed to do. But the second you start talking about like, maybe it's wrong that some of these other animals in captivity are there, most people are like, whoa, 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 there's nothing wrong with the zoos or whatever.
I don't know. I think it takes a long time for you to kind of come to the conclusion that it actually is wrong. I know personally, I've always looked forward to going to the zoo or the aquarium.
I love
and
aquariums.
Taking full advantage of the situation. It's so cool to learn about these animals, but at the same time, you have to put other things before yourself when they don't have their own voice. And I personally have decided in the last few years that I'm not going to attend any more of these things because I don't think that it's a good place for these animals to be.
Wow,
and
nice.
I think it takes...
Basic stand.
Yeah, and even though education is super important, I think that the actual being of the animals is better than understanding them by seeing them. You can read about them, you can see videos of them in their natural habitats.
No, I think you're right. I mean, so where, right, like there's just so much gray area here. Where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
Because I think with an aquarium, for instance, you could make the argument that like if you have a very large body of water and you put a fish in it, there is probably no difference to the fish in like a huge tank compared to like being in a pond or a river or an ocean.
Yeah, but then what's the point of having the fish if you can't see it 24/7?
Well, you would be able to see it in the big tank.
But if it's a big enough tank, not really.
Okay, let's hypothetical. We're going down the rabbit hole.
Okay.
You take like a fish this big.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, and you have like a wall-sized tank, and you fill it up with all those little fish, right? Are those fish even going to know that there's any difference between that and the ocean?
Well, you have to think about it too. In the process of getting those fish to that point, it's lots of energy, lots of money. Fish die. Like, you're putting them in a situation where they're not supposed to be, so there's a large chance that they will die anyways. They'll probably die earlier because they're not taking in the normal vitamins that they would be not in their normal environments. So, I don't know. I personally don't know. And I feel like this conversation can reach so much further than just zoos and aquariums and other captive places, all the way into ecotourism and things like that, where people are leaving their homes to go see these animals in their natural habitat and still destroying their natural habitat.
I mean, isn't there a way that like you can do that ecotourism without destroying the natural habitat? I guess you really, most of the time, don't really have a say if you sign up for one of those like safari trips or something.
No, but at the same time, you don't even know, like bringing in seeds on your shoes and walking down a trail and then depositing new plants.
Wow, nice.
So
Camera knows.
Oh, believe me, we could go on about this forever.
You need to write a report about this.
I have before.
You
Check it out. But I don't know. I think that it's an important conversation to have, and I think more people should be enlightened about this even idea, because who knows? Someone that goes to the zoo all the time and loves it could have a new perspective on the animals that they care about and they want to see. So